Whoa, Dad, go, Dad.
That's right. Welcome to Whoa Dad, Go Dad. My name's Dave Momper. I'm your host. This is a fatherhood podcast for new dads and soon-to-be dads. I'm a new dad myself, and I'm asking every day, great dads, what does it take? What does it truly take to take on the ultimate role? All right, let's get to it. George Pietrogallo, welcome to Whoa Dad, Go Dad. Thank you so much for being here, my friend.
Hey, Dave, thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. You're looking good. You're sounding good. I'm so excited for this conversation. Let's give the audience a little bit of context of our connection. We encountered each other first, if I recall, in Detroit on
That's
a
right.
project.
Yeah, that's
last
right.
year.
Work together.
Yeah, we worked together, and we have the good fortune of being coaches and facilitators and trainers of communication and leadership for various organizations around the country. And we sat down, we bellied up to a bar in Detroit. I think it was the night before a project up there. And it was, I'll tell you what, George, it was like I'd known you forever. You just felt like, the longtime friend that I didn't know I already had, So I've really valued our connection over the last year or so. And, even outside of our projects, I just love how thoughtful you are reaching out and checking in and rooting me on as a new dad and newly married guy. So appreciate that so much. You're recently married as well. You were
Yes.
married last year.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Yeah.
I value our friendship, and I appreciate the opportunity to join you today.
Well, I'm glad you're here. And I think it might serve the audience well to hear a little bit about the richness of your career. I know you were in a large energy company before you retired and then did this part-time coaching work, full-time for me, maybe part-time for you. I'm not sure how you think of it, but so you were in, what would it be called? Government affairs, public affairs with that
Yeah.
company.
Right. I worked about 17 years in public and government affairs for a very large oil company that everyone would recognize. And then before that, for 27 years, I was in the news media.
Yes.
I worked in television and radio, mostly television, but for about 27 years, and enjoyed that very much.
Award-winning journalist. I was making sure I saw some of your background on LinkedIn just to refresh my memory. And what was some of the favorite moments of that career? What was special about being a journalist that you adore? You look back and fond memories of those times. What stands out to you?
Yeah, what I liked about it, Dave, was it is the greatest continuing education a young person could ever have. I mean, if you think about it, one day you're covering a political rally or a political campaign. The next day you're covering something on the economy. The next day you're covering something in the criminal justice system. So you just see a wide scope of life, and you're exposed to a lot of different people. And as a result, you learn a lot, from doing exactly what you're doing, talking to a lot of different people about a very specific topic. And I enjoyed that part of it. I really did. I think it was the greatest continuing education a young person can ever have.
Wow. I mean, it probably taught you to be almost nimble or light on your feet at all times.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. You never knew from one moment to the other what you might be doing, or you may have a plan for the day and then it's disrupted by something that has just happened that then you must go and cover as a result. There, of course, anybody who's watched a television newscast knows there are all kinds of fires and things that make the news, and you never can predict when those are going to occur.
The literal fires, the proverbial fires.
Yeah, both. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And how much of your career was behind the desk or out in the field? How did that shape up? I suppose you're out in the field early on in your career more than later on in
That's
the career. Is that accurate?
That's true. I think it's probably was about 50-50. I really enjoyed the reporting part of it, because that's where you got to actually see things and meet people. Um, the anchor part was where you made the money. The ideal job would be to be a highly paid reporter. That would be the ideal job.
Mm.
But unfortunately, the way the business was structured, I had to do some anchor work in order to be able to feed my family. So that's the way it was, and we made it just fine.
And that was in Louisiana predominantly. Is that right? And
But Louisiana, yep. I worked in Michigan. I worked in New York briefly. I worked in Orlando, Florida, and then Louisiana.
now you reside outside of Washington D.C.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. The state or the Capitol building is about 50 minutes from my home, and it gives me an opportunity to keep my beak wet in some issues and some things that I enjoyed doing from a career standpoint and from a consulting standpoint.
And we had the good fortune of hanging out in DC last year as well on another project,
Right.
and to be in the capital of our country and wandering around. I had a little extra time in addition to the assignment, and I jumped on a couple of the electric bikes you can rent, and I just
Yep.
saw as much as I possibly could in a short period of time. So what a special place to do some work and to spend some time in personally. So
I
George,
want
when
to.
I reached out to you and invited you to join, I had sent you a prompt just to get the conversation going, asking you what does it mean to be a legendary father, and you replied back, intentional, relentless love to build a child's development, character, and faith requires men who are trainable, coachable, and dedicated to their family.
Yeah, I think that's right. And we're all still trying to get it right. The thing about this job is it never really ends. It ends with your death. I mean, that's you. You're always a dad, no matter what, no matter how old your children are, no matter uh, how young your children are. I want to congratulate you on Leo, and of course, you and Mackenzie are going through, I'm sure, the very early stages of learning how to not get urine in your eye as you change a diaper, and all those critical skills that are so important to a new dad.
Indeed, we are. Indeed, we are.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, learning on the fly. It's fun. It's fun. It's even I keep that. Have you ever heard the quote? It's by some sort of Zen master. Just, be like water. Just you kind of have to go with the flow. Even, I'm holding him just maybe an hour or two ago, putting him down for a nap, and he's
Yep.
swirling around. And part of me wants to just hold him down and be like, no, 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 just go to sleep. But you kind of have to just let them flail and dance with them a bit and just learn how to go with the flow with these little guys and gals. So it's definitely front and center learning opportunities all the time and surprises.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Projectile vomit or a little pee every now and then. Those are the surprises that you're like, oh God. But then again, it's all part of the game. So
That's right. That's
and
right.
you have some kids in their young 30s.
I do. I have a son who's 33, and he lives down in Florida. He sells real estate down there. And I have a daughter who's a registered dietitian. She lives not too far from you in Denver, Colorado.
Right on.
And
Yep.
they're both. She's 31 now, and they're both off into their lives and enjoying themselves, and it's really rewarding to see all the work that you and your wife put in over the course of those decades pay off to become really good humans. And that's what you're after, right? You're after raising good humans.
No doubt about it. And I recall recently you were hanging out with your father in Florida and your
Yes,
son.
yes.
And what's it like to have three generations of Pietrogallos in the same room?
Well, it's a circus. Let me tell you, it's a lot of fun actually. And anybody who has had the privilege of having any of their parents lived for a very long time. My dad's now, he's going to be 92 on May 21st.
Wow.
And, he's just a great guy. He's a fun guy. We all watched the Super Bowl together, and,
Okay.
he's a character, and, doing very well. He's an inspiration to all of us. And to answer your question, to have intergenerational conversation like that is so rich and rewarding. And there's a lot of teasing and kidding that goes on, and a lot of laughter, and just moments that we'll treasure as a family forever. And I know you know that too.
It's got to be special. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering about you're a junior, so your father's name is George, I suspect. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I guess he had a short list of names he was going to consider.
Yep.
And what's interesting, my dad does not have a middle name. So in order for me to be a junior, I couldn't have a middle name. And so for the rest of my life, I've had to explain that to people. It's
Oh,
been
nice.
an interesting ride. But yeah, I enjoy. It's an honor. It's an honor to carry his name.
Beautiful. So thinking about the way that your father raised you
Yep.
and the influence he was on you, what did you glean from him as a father to Alex and to Courtney that, I don't know, maybe you've even acknowledged this to him, like, hey, Pops, I just want to give you credit. You taught me A, B, and C, and I
Yeah.
couldn't do it without those things. What are those things from your pops?
Golly, there are so many things, and that's hopefully if we're doing our jobs right, we're feeding in all kinds of things to our children. Not so much by what we say, right? Because they're gonna absorb some of that, but it's much more what they see us do,
Mm.
and that's a challenge, isn't it? So with my dad, to your question, it would have been things like patience. He was a very patient man. I mean, yeah, he had 3 sons, right? There's 3 of us. So you can imagine what the house was like, I mean, we were a tornado. Let's face it. The 3 of us in one room together were a tornado. And so he was very patient. Um, yeah, one thing he always stressed was education. He did not, as a Korean war vet, come back and take advantage of the GI Bill. And he really always regretted that, something he always talked about.
Mm.
So he always pushed education for us. And he always said, try to do your best to get with a big corporation. He ultimately worked more than 25 years for the Kellogg Company, but he worked in a factory. He was the kind of person that you would want on your team. He's the kind of guy who he shows up, has a great attitude, has a smile on his face. So we learned all of that by watching him, not so much by him telling us, but by watching him. And my mother too. My mother was a registered nurse, and she worked for decades in various hospitals in our community and did everything from the nursery uh, to operating rooms and emergency rooms, just the whole gamut. Unfortunately, she passed away when she was 69 uh, um, of breast cancer. Uh, so make sure, men, all of you, make sure that the woman that you love gets checked each and every year. That's something I always tell people whenever I have a chance. Um,
What was your mom's name?
her name was Jo. She was
What's the-
her full name was Jo Bina. She was named after a silent movie star
Mm.
from Pittsburgh, Tennessee, which ironically wasn't far from where she grew up. So
Oh, wait.
yeah, it was really really neat. But what about you? What are some of the things that really your dad really impressed upon you? I know you have a great relationship with your dad, and that's really 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 neat. So what kinds of things did he impart to you, not only by what he said, but by what he did?
No doubt about it. Well, I mean, it was both my folks were very committed to how they spent their lives. That there wasn't My dad was definitely very career focused with the Forest Service, over 35 years, the Forest Service. And that put a lot of the household and the day-to-day raising of my brother and I on my mom. She was the most amazing stay-at-home mom and she was my my Cub Scout den leader at one point. My dad was the can't remember all the terms in Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts, but he was the head guy for the whole little town we lived in for the Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, and my mom was our den leader. So I
So
think
like
he was just
the
what's
troop
that?
leader, I
Troop
think it's,
leader,
yeah,
den leader. Yeah, I mean, they both were so committed to us thriving, and everything was uh, everything was adventurous. We took a lot of great weekend trips, summer trips. We drove. I remember the most notable adventure we ever went on as kids. We drove from Colorado to Alaska, spent 3 or 4 weeks out and about, went all the way to the Arctic Circle, Ford F-250. We didn't, I don't think we towed the trailer all the way up there, but we had a camper trailer with us throughout the trip. And then we did a quick, stint up to the Arctic Circle. And my parents were just, they were our biggest fans. They taught
yeah,
us, I can picture my dad holding the door for every person he ever, he's just so thoughtful and kind to other people.
yeah,
He did have like a stern side to him too. So it wasn't like he was gentle in the right ways, but he was also, he was convicted. He had a power behind him, and so did my mom. They held us accountable, and they set standards for us. And yet when we failed, they guided us back to a good place. And I wonder I'll have them in a conversation here one of these days, but I was a pain. My brother was probably less of a pain, but I think I was quite a pain. So for them, one thing they taught me was, uh, staying steady, at least the concept of staying steady. And I see right now everything is pretty copacetic, and of course, Leonidas is just smiling and laughing and giggling and pooping and peeing, like, he's pretty innocent right now. What's it gonna be like when he gets an attitude and he becomes a teenager and he's testing boundaries? Like, how am I gonna handle that? And I'll have my parents to emulate a healthy way. So I'll give them credit for that. And they just knew how to have fun. We
yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
fun and
That's so good. And I think about a lot of kids who, and we went to school with some, I'm sure you did too, who didn't have that, who maybe didn't have that great role model at home, or maybe didn't even have somebody at home, when they got there. Maybe their mother or their grandmother working to kind of make ends meet and help things. And so I guess I always think about kids who didn't have that role model to watch, and think about what we can do even today in helping them as well. Bringing everybody together. Uh,
how do we do that? I mean, I love the sentiment. Is there a process or a way or a system to besides, of course, in any given moment, you see a little kid or someone who needs some affection and some attention, you can give them that. But what's your strategy there?
well, there are, of course, formal ways you can do that. With the Big Brother program, and I've been a big brother in my life. Um, those kinds of things I think are good, but there's really no substitute for somebody who is in some kid's corner, always supporting them, always giving them what they need. And I guess I would just say be available. This is parenting, as you well know, is a little bit like football in the sense that the best ability is availability, right?
Mm.
And so, being available for people who may not have the same blessings in life that you have had, I think is really important. And I don't think we ever can really say that we get over that or have graduated from that. I think that's a lifelong pursuit, being aware of kids who need help, in your neighborhood, at work, wherever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah, I can recall my dad being friends with a lot of our neighbor kids, which most of them that I remember had good connections with their family, but my dad was always just the sweetest guy, and my mom was the sweetest gal to all the neighborhood kids, and extended their parental mindset beyond just my brother and I. So George,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the journey you've been on as a father over 3 decades of fatherhood. I almost wonder what you think your dad would say to this as well, but I suspect parenting has evolved over time to a degree from when you first became a father to now. And
Yeah.
so I'm wondering about, what do you think are the key constants to great parenting, great fatherhood that exist? And what have you noticed has changed?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would say to that is that some things are timeless, right? Um, we often say, well, kids don't come with an instruction book, but in fact, they do. The Bible serves as a great instruction book for any parent. It was true for my dad.
Mm,
One of the reasons why he did as well as he did with parenting, in spite of the fact that he lost his father at 7, so he never really had a go by. Um, and even if my grandfather had lived longer, there were issues in the home. There were issues in the home that made it not an optimal model.
mm,
Uh, but uh, in the Bible, it talks about train up a child in the way he will go, and when he's older, he won't depart from it. There may be some adjustments and some mid-course corrections that are required, especially in those teenage years, but hopefully they come back to the plumb line of truth. And that's the way it was for my dad, and the way it's been for me and my children. So that's one thing that's a constant. What's different, I think, today is social media and all of the other attendant pressures that brings um, to children and teenagers and young adults. And that's something that we have yet to come to grips with, I think. And that's something that will probably even be different by the time Leo is a teenager. I think it will have evolved even more, and heaven knows what it'll be like. But I can tell you that there will be challenges along the way that you'll need to meet as a father, and I have no doubt that you'll meet them. But there's a quote from a guy by the name of Charles Kettering. He was an American inventor and engineer. He held like 186 patents or some crazy number like that. And he once said, every father should remember that one day his son is going to watch and watch and watch. And at the end of the day, he will follow his example, not his advice.
mm.
And so if you think about that, that's kids learn by watching, not by lecture.
And then ironically, there's the adage, do as I say, not as I do, or something
Yeah,
like that, right? It's like, nope, that's not how it works. That is not
exactly.
how it works. And I even see, I've been thinking about, raising Leo to be a great man and a loving, you know, passionate, thoughtful, gentle human being, and someone who can find a great, partner in life. And it's like everything, the way I talk to Mac, the way I touch her and spend time with her, he's watching that already. I don't think he's internalizing it quite yet, probably, but And then even our dog, reprimanding my dog a few times, I'm like, hmm, if he were to mimic that, would that,
Yeah.
would that be valuable for him? And there's been
Abs-
a few times where I let my dog have it just because it felt like she broke the rule of some sort, right? Not a I'm not physically abusing her by any means, but you're letting her know she's in the wrong, or she needs to stay inside the house or something like that. You just this pressure on me. They're like, shoot, he's always watching. In theory, he's always watching. Am I, it's like this amazing, it's probably the greatest accountability partner I've ever had.
no doubt.
The
No doubt.
future Leonidas, or the future of Leonidas and the future Leonidas is somehow the greatest accountability partner. Even how I'm spending my time is coming into more scrutiny. Am I really, and of course I got to spend time for myself to a degree, but I also can't waste time. There's other ways to spend that time with him or on behalf of the family, or
Yeah.
it's it's
Oh,
it's funny how it's put it on the perspective.
being a dad teaches you time management. I mean, to think about it, it's all about taking care of yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually. Yeah, physically because you need energy to do what you do. Right. Both you and Mackenzie are right now it's man on man. Right. What happens when you have to play zone when number two comes along?
Yeah,
You know.
right.
So there's that. And one thing I'll give my dad credit for was he was always really good at making all of us feel valued.
Mm.
One of his quotes, one of his favorite things he would say to all of us is, "You have been a blessing since day one."
Oh,
And so I've tried to alter that just slightly and say something very similar to my children and keep that rolling. Make sure they understand that they are valued and that there's nothing they can do that can flip a switch to where you're not going to love them or support them. You support them and you love them no matter what. So that's really been good. I'm sure, there were days when I made my dad pull his hair out, and I'm sure there are days when probably 75% of his gray hairs were my fault, you know, but, he really did show us a lot of love and support and, always made us feel valued. So for new dads everywhere. That's something that I would throw out there.
what was little George like? What were you like when you were 6 and 7 years old?
I was a mischievous son of a gun. I wanted to be a cowboy and,
Yeah, you
and
did.
yeah. And, so, I had my little cap gun and my little, horse with the broom handle on it, and I'd ride around the house and handle business. But, as I grew up, I wanted to be, an astronaut.
Mm.
And I didn't have the eyesight that was necessary for being a fighter pilot or a test pilot, which in those days was kind of the route to be an astronaut.
I see.
So I ended up covering astronauts for a living.
Yeah, you did.
Yep.
Thinking about all the new dads that might be listening, you know, what's the ethos or the mindset you encourage us to deploy in the early years? There's so much changing, it's happening fast. There's these I suspect, I mean, we're 6 months in, just shy of 6 months.
Yep.
He hasn't really had any major challenges that that we're overwhelmed by, that we're like, oh, I hope he grows out of that. But I know a lot of what he will face and the things he'll experience are stages. Um, and you get past one thing and another thing is going to show up. But I don't know, what would you say is the right ethos or mindset to deploy as a new dad?
Well, number one thing you can do, in my view, is, and this is true not only in the early days but all throughout their lives, the most important thing you can do as a man is love their mom. Love their mom in the way that Christ loved the church. And that is a very selfless love, a sacrificial love. You love their mother like that, and you're going to have amazing things happen in your family that you can't even begin to predict right now. Uh, that's very, 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 very powerful. Um, and it's funny how your perspective changes when you have one child versus when you have multiple children in the household. Right now you're like making sure Leo doesn't, bruise himself, or making sure he doesn't hit his head, or making sure, the second child comes along and you're like, please don't bleed on the carpet. Take that outside. What do you, it's that kind of change of mindset. So I think the first thing I would say is love mom like there's no tomorrow. Learn the basics, be a help, bathing, changing, calming, safe sleeping. That's something that's changed from when I was a new father. We didn't think anything of putting a blanket or a pillow in the bed. That's not best practice today. So being up on all of those issues um, around child safety, choosing the gear. Kids come with gear now, don't they? I mean,
Yeah.
lots of amazing gear.
It's
Uh,
it's almost overwhelming, and
yeah,
there's a market opportunity with fatherhood and babyhood where people are making widgets and gadgets and this and that's all the time to try to improve or simplify. It's almost too much stuff. It's almost
yeah,
counterproductive, but nevertheless.
yeah. There's so many good things out there that can help you in your fatherhood journey. Help mom and dad really, but be a help around the house, clean, organize. Don't be deeply involved in all those things, because whether she'll tell you it or not, she's tired. And when you help her, that puts an emotional deposit in your bank account.
Mhm.
And you will thank me later for this advice.
Absolutely. And the creating a partnership or acting in partnership with your wife. And I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah, Mac and I've got a decent rhythm with that. I probably should check in with her and see what else she needs, but we're both all hands on deck, it feels like, and
Yeah.
tackling whatever needs to happen.
Yeah. You
Um,
got to plan. You got to know who's on night shift, who's doing the laundry, who's doing the cleaning, all of those things. That division of labor, the cooking, the cleaning, all of that. That can be a tricky place to navigate in the early days of fatherhood. And it can also be a tricky place to navigate as the kids get older and, they become teenagers, and there are all these activities that they must be transported to before they drive. Driving is a whole other thing. That's a whole other, that's where I got all my gray hair. But, you know, planning that work-life balance. How are you guys going to manage childcare? I know you're just thinking about that. What kinds of issues are you guys dealing with regard to childcare? One thing that's different from when I was a dad was I had no choice in my job, but to be at a certain place at a certain time for a certain number of hours.
mhm.
The beautiful thing that's happened in COVID and beyond is this whole notion of working from home is becoming more and more accepted. I think that's going to open up doors of opportunity for parents, fathers in particular, to be more involved in their kids' lives. And I think that's a great thing.
No doubt about it. Although some industries, some roles, some professions will remain constrained and structured and regimented like you experienced. But I have the good fortune. I've built my career to a point where I'm more in control of my own time and calendar than perhaps I was 10 years ago, for sure. Mac works from home. and has a decent amount of flexibility and a great team she's on, great manager. So currently we have the good fortune of having Leo home with us, the whole time, all the time. And no need for, well, there's probably some exceptions to this that are coming soon. But for the most part, I settle in with you for a little while today. I've got a couple other endeavors to prepare for later in the week that I'll spend on some time on today. But I get to run up and spend time with him and hold him and put him down for a nap. And even yesterday, I'm not sure what time it was, maybe 3:30. I just took a little power nap with him. What a gift. Honestly, it's
Yeah.
absolutely the greatest little moments of, I'm laying there going, wow, I have plenty to do. I have so many, my task list, professional list, working out, just everything. I could be doing that right now. But then again, I'll never get this moment back. He's going to grow up fast. Like, I'm just trying to savor those little, those little gifts of time
Absolutely.
with them.
Absolutely. And that is, you've got a lot of great thoughts that you've just expressed that are a benefit to everybody. I mean, if you think about it, a child all throughout their life, they spell love Time. And, an author much smarter than me, wrote that. And, I just think there's so much truth to that. And, to the extent that you can, just remember that self-care is not a crime. It is something that you both need to be engaged in, and give each other the grace to take care of yourselves and exercise, and then come back refreshed and renewed to what is the most important job you'll ever have in your life.
Indeed. And we have, we're living on the west side of Denver in Golden, Colorado. We have a little hiking trail right out our backyard. So you can incorporate time and therefore love of your child and exercise, strap him to my chest, push him around the trails. We're lucky in that regard. Um, I'm just thinking about the the amount of information today for fathers to sift through. Should you
Yep.
want to, it's like, if you're buying a car, Consumer Reports and the internet, it's like, you can do a lot of homework, right? And
Yep.
that's the same case with children. Between this podcast is another version of content available for dads. There's books, uh, there's experts, there's just an endless amount of resources. But do you have a few thoughts on either authors or mentors or books that really spoke to you, that were perhaps that wisdom was timeless and useful for anybody and everybody? What stands out?
Well, I'll begin with the most timeless book there is. It's a bestseller. It is the number one bestseller of all time, and it's the Bible. And you cannot go wrong when you're seeking wisdom or struggling with an issue, whether it's childhood or something else. You simply cannot go wrong opening the pages there and considering what it has to say about certain issues. With regard to parenting, there are so many good verses. I'll just give you a few that I jotted down to think about. Um, Ephesians 5:25, Proverbs 22:6, 1 Timothy 5:8. Um, those are some really good ones to start with. And beyond
George,
that,
would you mind reading just one of those? I just want to hear, and then show me that book that you're about to pull out. But
yep. So I should have known. Well, Ephesians 5:25 is the one that basically says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. That's what we talked about when I was talking about loving mom,
Mhm.
wife. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't depart from it. That's Proverbs 22:6.
Wow.
And this is, when we think about men and providing for our families, there's a verse in, let me get this right. Bear with me just one second. 1 Timothy 5:8 says, anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than a non-believer. So that's pretty direct.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
we're to take care of our families. And, of course, economic challenges being what they are today, it takes a mom and a dad working together sometimes to make a go of it. Um, and so we have to work all of that out. I do have some other books though that I did pull off the shelf that I do recommend. This is from Dr. Ken Canfield, and it is 7 Secrets of Effective Fathers. Really good book. I'll just pull out a quote here if I can real quick. Let's see. Uh, talks about not letting the television be the dad. That's big. And I would add to that social media these
I
days.
was gonna say, yeah, these days the television is almost
Yeah,
moot, but the
yeah,
cell phone, and even right now, if I'm on my phone and Leo's nearby, he sees the shiny light in my hand and he's going, I want that. That looks interesting. So I'm kind of worried that, this is again emulating best practices. If he sees me on that all the time, uh, how is that going to affect his perception of what it means to make the most of this life? Oh, they're on their thingy, whatever that is, that phone
yep,
thingy.
yep.
Um,
Here's
that's
another.
that's telling.
The effective father is one who maintains a long-term commitment to his children.
Mm.
You're never done, right? This is a job that never goes away. My kids know that if they ever need anything, they can call me 24/7, and I'll be on a plane or I'll send them whatever they need or whatever. You have to, it's a lifelong commitment. Another book is by Dr. Henry Cloud. It's called 9 Things You Simply Must Do. And it talks about succeeding in love and succeeding in life. And it's really one that I'll recommend. Another one is especially for dads. And this is by Dr. Charles Stanley. And it is called The Landmines in the Path of the Believer.
Mm.
Uh, there are all kinds of things that trip us up in life, right? As men, there are all kinds of things that trip us up. It can be anything from, drinking too much to pornography to all different types of issues. And sometimes those issues can change the self-talk that we give ourselves, that make us doubt ourselves. The enemy loves that. I mean, think about it. If if the enemy is successful in affecting fathers, he also affects the family. If he affects family, he's also affecting communities. If he affects communities, he's also affecting the country. I mean, I don't want to get too dramatic about it, but I think it is that important. Fatherhood matters. It matters a great deal. It's the most important job you will ever have.
Mm.
And so, to your earlier point, there are a lot of great resources out there, and a lot of them are digital resources too. I think there's one, fatherhood.gov is a good resource. There are several others, and the algorithms better than I do that will spit out all kinds of information for you when you go to Google or to go to Yahoo.
Or these days, you go to Chat GPT and you say, "How do I be a
There you-
good father?" And
Yeah,
you let
yeah,
AI tell you, how to run the show. Tell me
yeah.
this, George. You got 33 years of fatherhood experience. 2 kids. What was the hardest part? What was the messiest part? What was the biggest chunk of adversity you had to help them navigate through?
Yeah.
And I mean, the hardest part for them, of course, it was hard on you, but what's the hardest thing you had to help them overcome?
Well, I think it's different with every child, right? I think the teenage years, a lot of parents will tell you, are some of the most difficult, um, because they are almost, to hear them tell it, they're adults now, and really they're almost adults. The truth is their frontal lobes are not fully formed yet, and they, don't really appreciate risk as much as some of us do. And so they do things that, and I know I did things that, looking back on it, were not that smart. Uh, so I would say, for parents, probably the teenage years are the most, harrowing to navigate. Not only do you have the normal things that you're concerned about with their development, but you also have all of the outside influences, all of the questions about alcohol, questions about sexual activity, all the questions about, uh, nowadays, guns in school, all of these things that, will contribute to, prematurely graying one's hair, that inspire in that high school period of time. But having said that, I also want to say, it is also some of the most rewarding time too. Um, because if you think about it, you're watching them bloom as individuals. You're watching them get opportunities that you've spent a lifetime trying to position them for.
Mhm.
Um, my daughter played, uh, volleyball in high school, and I used to love to watch her games. And she was also a soccer, player. She was the goalie of the soccer team, which is a pretty unrewarding place. Perfection, anything less than perfection makes you wince, right? It's
Yes.
it's hard. But and then my son played, high school baseball, and so we spent a good number of days in baseball stadiums from Texas to Florida, watching him play. They were both very good students. I had one who ultimately went to a Ivy League school, and I had another who went to a state school. Both of them, came out, magnificently doing what they love to do. So it's a rewarding time, but it's also a challenging time.
No doubt. And rewarding and challenging for the dad, for you, for the parent. How
Yep.
about the adversity that kiddos go through? Whatever scenario they may have been faced with, whether it was when they were 4 years old or maybe younger or all the way through even their 30s now. How did you instill? I just heard this earlier when you were talking about an aspect of one of the books you recommended, is helping them build um, a mental fortitude and resilience, and having an attitude that they can they can they can conquer anything, they can persevere. That how did you instill the right mindset early on so that then they could capitalize on their teenage years and so forth?
Yep.
What were your actual disciplines, practices?
Right. What one of them was, we had a rule in the house that you simply couldn't say I can't.
Mm,
Uh, if you wanted to say I can't yet,
I like
that was
this.
fine. But you couldn't say I can't, because I didn't believe in limitations for them, and I didn't want them to believe in limitations for themselves. So that's something we instituted pretty early on.
Right.
When you talk about adversity, I can remember one time very specifically where, as I told you, my son played baseball. He had one season in summer ball where the team went something like 1 win and 42 losses.
Oof.
42 losses. So after the last game of that summer, I went up to his room and I said, no matter what else happens in baseball or in life, it will never be like this again. It will never be like this again. And you shouldn't take anything away from this other than you guys have found 42 ways to build upon your success in the future. You know,
Yeah.
that's right. You know, the story about the light bulb, right? And all the failures that led up to the invention of the light bulb. It's the same kind of thing. You lost a lot of games, and that taught you resilience. It teaches you adversity, how to deal with adversity, how to shoulder it as a team. You know, there's so many parallels in sports that I think are really good corollaries for life for kids. You know, so
Yeah, indeed. How about leadership and communication? That's our field. You and
yeah,
I spend time supporting and empowering professionals who are all adults to be great communicators, to be great leaders, to get uh, to get great work done with their peers and to be competitive and so forth. What's the correlation to leadership and communication and fatherhood, raising kids? Like, how early on were you very deliberately teaching them how to communicate well, how to lead well, and what did that look like?
Hmm. Well, there's an old saw that says you spend a lot of your early days trying to get your kids to walk and talk, and then you spend the rest of your life trying to get them to sit down and shut up. No,
That,
but
that's
the,
funny.
the the truth of the matter is that you actually through discipline and through, again, more through the power of your example than anything else. You have immense influence as a leader in the household, right? As a dad. And moms have an immense influence, by, again, not so much by what they say, but what they do and how they handle certain situations. Um, it's an honor to build and to influence young lives. And you influence through your habits that you develop, So I have a habit of getting up very early, you know, and getting to work early and being, doing all those things. You influence through what you say to them, but again, more than anything else, you influence through what you do. And those eyes, no matter how old or young, they're still watching. You know, I have no doubt that my son, we talk often, and the dynamic is really cool. It goes from, right now you're a protector and a provider, and you're kind of helping to make sure that everything goes right. But as they get older, you become more of a trusted advisor, and
Mhm.
that is really cool and really fun to see that develop for your son and daughters too.
I
Did
imagine.
question or did I just ramble?
No, I think I don't know. We're just gonna run with it either way. But I'm just curious about this trusted advisor thing. Where
Yeah.
at what age of your kiddos is that shift taking place? And then I would suspect some parents uh, struggle to build the rapport and the trust to end up being the trusted advisor. So what goes wrong that we should be on the lookout for? What do I need to do to set myself up for success to be that trusted advisor? So at what age, and then what do I need to do to set that up?
Well, I don't think there's a magic age. I think it varies with the child, and their development. Um, and I would hate to say, well, it's at precisely this waypoint that it happens. The truth of the matter is this is something that you have to do for decades. You want your kids to feel loved. You want them to trust. One of the problems we have in our society today is there's a dearth of trust anywhere. You want your family, and in particular your children, to know that they have a safe haven where they can come home and trust that it's going to be a place of peace and love and joy and positive memories. Now, that may sound a little bit like, some pie in the sky, because we all have struggles and challenges. My first marriage ended in divorce. You talk about struggles and feeling like you weren't doing right by your kids and weren't. So I come here, anything that I know, I've learned the hard way through making mistakes. I don't come here as a perfect dad. I don't go, we're all trying to figure it out. Right.
Mhm.
And, and all I can say is that the times that I have come to the end of myself, that's when you lean on the Lord, and that's when good things seem to happen, because that's where your true help comes from.
George, how did you handle whether it was the divorce being a major moment or experience of adversity or any other challenges in your career or as a human working through what it means to be a human? I know you would lean on your faith and so forth, but in terms of articulating to your kiddos, like, hey, dad's going through something, how explicit were you, or how frank were you? How much did you shelter them from the drama, or how much did you show them, gosh, I'm fallible, a work in progress? Like, how do those conversations go if they happened, or what was the interaction like with the inevitable adversity? All parents are going to face something,
Yeah.
and you're not the perfect dad. You're not the perfect human. We're all a work in progress, and I think there's something noble about owning that and sharing that with your kiddos. But you got to be a little bit thoughtful of how you package it, perhaps, or. So, what's your
Yeah.
advice on sharing the rawness of life with your kids, various stages?
Yeah. And I think there are age appropriate ways to do that, depending on where they are in their development. I think early on, the best thing you can do is to keep them safe, up through about 5 or 6. You want them to know that they're loved, and know that they're safe. And as time goes on, when it becomes appropriate, you can let them in on a certain reality of life, which is that, mommy and daddy aren't perfect, and that we struggle with things. We have challenges, and we have bills, and we have, work at home here, and work at work, and all of these things that we're trying to juggle, and that all of these balls are made of glass, and we try not to drop the wrong one. And so, I think one of the things that you can do is just be honest with your kids. Again, in an age appropriate way, be honest with them. Hey, I'm going through a really tough time at work right now that's requiring far more of my time than I really like. But but we're going to get through this, and I just need your grace to kind of help me get through this. Kids are always watching. I want to tell you a quick story.
Yeah.
I get home one day, and my son is less than 4 years old, and he's playing in the driveway. And I had a habit of backing the car into the garage. And so I didn't want to do that until he was in the car with me, so I knew where he was.
Mhm.
So, of course, he had spent the day watching his mother drive around town running errands and so forth. So I said, well, tell you what, Alex, you drive. And, so he's back, got the steering wheel. And as he's driving, he's saying things like, move it, mister. Hurry up, lady. And now, where in the world do you think he got that?
It's interesting.
I just thought that was hilarious.
Yeah.
And, and it's to the point of kids are always watching, and they're learning whether you know it or not. You want to just make sure what they're learning is what you want them to learn. The other short story, we talk about trust. I was trying to teach my daughter how to ride her bike. So I take her out in this wide open field. There was one telephone pole in the entire field,
Okay.
safe place, right? I'm running beside her. She gets going. I let the bike go. She's riding. She's doing great. Heading right for that pole. The one place
Yeah, of course.
it wouldn't be safe. She's headed right for that pole and she hits the pole. Well, don't you know, she looked at me like I had committed the crime of the century and blamed me for her hitting that pole. But, that cuts to the trust thing. You got to be careful because things can go wrong. Trust is a fragile thing, right? It
How
took
did
her
you
a while.
handle that? Did you take ownership of the situation even though
Yeah.
maybe it was, you know?
Yes, I did. I said, Daddy, sorry. It's the one place would have run into a problem and here we are, but
No,
I'll look on her face.
that strikes me as, it's very similar to any sort of corporate environment where, you've got your people who you're stewarding, who you're leading, who you're managing, coaching, and everything. And you say you've got trust with them, but something goes awry. Maybe it's not even your fault, but what does a leader do? They take responsibility. They take ownership. They recalibrate that relationship. They accept the, the impact, and then they also recommit to something specific. Like, we're going to make sure this doesn't happen again, right? Dad's got your back. This was an anomaly. We're going to do our best to mitigate you getting hurt, of course. And let's get back on that bike, right? So there's all these. I feel like you've said it a few times that fatherhood is the ultimate role. That's really what I'm experimenting with in these conversations. Is it's the ultimate role. That's my thesis. What does it actually take to make the most of that role?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it takes humility. I think it takes endurance. I think it takes faith and, you know, hard work and the ability to have fun. You know, let me give you an example of something we did. And it's important to do this when the kids are young because you'll get answers you like better. Kids were young. I said, all right, everybody, let's make a list of where we want to go on our family vacation. And you do this when they're young so that they don't say Bali or, Paris or Rome so we got this list and the list is like, I want to see the Grand Canyon. I want to go to Washington, D.C. I want to go to Hawaii.
Mm.
That was an outlier. I was wondering how I think mom might have slipped that one in. But anyway, that list became our family vacation list. And we would one year after the other, knock it out, knock it out, knock it out. And it was a lot of fun. The other thing I want to encourage you to do today and all new dads is get yourself a folder. This is mine.
Mm.
And it says children's notes. And you're going to get them starting when, they're old enough to scribble on a piece of paper. Um, and all the notes you got, and you know what? I'm still getting them. Years later, all these decades later, I'm still getting them. And trust me, I keep every one of them right in here. And if I'm having a bad day, I pull out that file and I start reading notes. And
I hope
it's
Alex and Courtney get a chance to listen to this podcast and see that, and frankly, everything else you're saying is be special for them to hear it. Um,
well,
what do you think? Social media comes to mind. I'm already answering the question I'm about to pose, but what what has changed about fatherhood? What else has changed about fatherhood? The pressure or whatever you might say, the dynamic that social media creates, navigating that's going to be hard. You're now at a stage in your life you can see the big picture perhaps better than someone who's say right in the thick of it. Uh,
right.
and so I'm just wondering, now that you've got a more macro perspective on the world, what other unexpected obstacles now present themselves from your vantage on being a really great dad or a great mom, great parents that you might say, hey, just be on the lookout for this or this. I'm just noticing this, or I'm worried about that. I'm wondering how that's going to play out. What are you noticing about the world?
Well, and this is probably more true pre-COVID, but work-life balance is something that we all struggle with. And, that's an area that I did not do a good job on, to be honest. When I was in media, I would do newscasts at 6 and 10 o'clock. And fortunately, I lived close enough to the studios where I could come home for dinner. So that was good. But, that was a challenge. Work-life balance was a challenge. So monitoring that is something that I would strongly recommend. The challenges today that parents face, um, I think in large measure stem from the media exposures that the kids have, the social media exposures, the movies, make sure that the content that they're exposed to is consistent with your belief system. That's something you have to be intentional about because, you know, don't worry about the world's going to teach them how to swear and do all those things. You don't need to teach them that. Isn't it interesting? You only really have to focus on teaching them how to do right because all the rest of it, the world will give them for free.
That's so true. And would you, the goal is not to shelter them from the world and the world
No,
teaching them the wrong stuff per
right,
se, but
right,
to, but to almost give them a heads up, like, hey, the world's going to tempt you or, lure you or, reveal to you another way of doing things that sometimes aren't going to be appropriate or aren't going to be productive. I want you to
right.
be on the lookout for those things. And here's my advice on best practices, what to do right. But here's be aware. The world is out there tempting us. Is
Yeah.
that kind of how you'd frame it?
Yeah, and there's a book out. It's more about life in general than parenting specifically, but it was written by Nick Saban, and the title of the book is "How Good Do You Want to Be?" And it's true in life, whether you're an athlete or whether you're a parent or whether you're an employee or whether you're a business owner, whatever it is. How good do you want to be? You have to be intentional about it. Exactly what you're doing right now. You're being intentional about your study of fatherhood and getting input from people who, have struggled through it themselves, and emerged with certain things that they became aware of because of the struggle, right? And, being a parent is a challenge because there are going to be people out there who are going to want to bully. There are going to be people out there who are going to want to mislead. There are going to be people out there who are going to want to harm, your children. Again, to your point, you don't want to shelter them. You can't put them in bubble wrap and not properly prepare them for life on planet Earth as we know it. But you want to give them a strong uh, value system. You want to give them strong instincts. You want to give them a clean sense of what is right and what is wrong. And then there, as you do that, you're beginning to prepare them for the challenges that they will face throughout their lives, not only as kids, but as adults going into, their profession.
Yeah, it's an ongoing conversation, I suspect, every day. And the tone of the conversation, I'm now realizing this. I'm picturing my father when he was my age. So I'm 43. When my dad was 43, I would have been 15, I believe, which is a crazy juxtaposition, having a 6-month old and my dad having a 15-year-old, I believe, if I'm doing my math right. And I never appreciated that my dad was effectively sorting out and my mom was sorting out what it means to be a productive, healthy, happy human being. I thought, they've got it figured out. As a kid, you don't see your parents as a work in progress. And now I realize, Well, I don't have everything nailed down, George. You know,
No.
I, I'm sorting it out as well. And can I actually not confide in Leo, but can I confess to Leo, uh, the journey I'm on, and in an age appropriate way, and the depth of the conversation, depending on where he's at in his stages. But can I do that as a way to guide him, and to connect with him, I suppose, and build that rapport. But um, I think that's going to be it's just this revelation that I couldn't conceive of it until I had the kid. It's like,
Right.
oh, so it just puts so much into perspective. And I almost want to go back to when I was 10 years old and I was admiring my parents and thinking, either, I don't know, maybe when I was 15, it would be a better, like I probably had some animosity towards my folks for some reason here and there. And they're telling me what to do and, you know, limiting me, but it's like, well, they're just trying to figure out the best path to give me the best chance. And there's some empathy afforded now that you never had. Um, you just never had. So, a big question for you. I'm just thinking, I know you can't change the past. I know the point isn't necessarily even to change the past. If you could, it's to learn from the past. But what would you change if one thing was available to change about how you navigated fatherhood historically? Is there something out there that you're like, you know what? If I could do it over again, it'd be this little scenario. It'd be, this moment in time. What comes to mind for me to be on the lookout, perhaps, or just to reflect on the journey? What would you change, if anything?
Well, I think part of it is, early on, I was really focused on making sure that I could adequately provide for my family. And that to me meant working hard, and it meant sometimes I would spend probably more time at work than, looking back on it, I wish I would have, to be honest. Um, and there was a time, I went back to night school to get my MBA when my kids were, very young.
Mhm.
And as a result, I wasn't very much fun to be around for that 3 years I was going to night school. I would go to work all day, go to class at night, come home, do my homework, fall asleep for 5 hours, turn around and do it all again. And I did that 3 years. Well, eh, looking back on it, I'm not so sure that that was worth the time
Mm,
that I missed with them as young.
yeah. Well, and funny
Uh,
enough, I saw on LinkedIn, I didn't realize you got a finance MBA, right? Or was it a
right, right.
master's in finance?
Yeah, and it was a hobby that got out of control. I've always been interested in investing, and I also felt that, if I was going to be able to send them to school, uh, that was going to be important. And I mean, sometimes good intentions can get out of control. You know,
Sure. But then
so
think
I
of the opportunity cost,
yeah,
that the calculation in our hearts and our minds, that some people aren't necessarily doing the math, I suppose. They're not being as intentional. You use that word. I love that word, intentional, being an intentional father, but really evaluating the opportunity cost of things. And
yeah,
I mean, I appreciate the decision you made, because it probably helped you with earnings. It helped you build more wealth. It helped you create more opportunity, get more clarity on the world, so then you could equip your kiddos. It came at a cost of
aim at a
time and
call.
attention. Yeah.
No question. Yeah, no question. So I think that's one thing. You talk about regrets. I think that one of the things that you and Mackenzie are doing that is great with Leo is that so far, at least, they haven't had to endure daycare.
Mm.
Um, we didn't stop daycare until we had an incident. at daycare.
Mm.
I came home one night from work and I barely recognized my son's face. And he had fallen, according to the a daycare worker, into a hard surface. And we were never contacted or given any indication that there was a problem until my wife came and picked him up.
Mm.
So that led to a family discussion, which, long story short, led to a one paycheck household as opposed to a two paycheck household. And we just made the decision that whatever adjustments we had to make, we were going to make them, and it wasn't worth that. So if I had something to do differently, we would have done that from Jump Street rather than going through
Well,
experience.
these days, the math it's crazy what childcare costs. If you're putting them in full time, it's almost equivalent to a reasonable salary after taxes. And
Yep.
you got to think about maybe 5-10 years down the road for me or Mackenzie to go, not be in the workplace if we wanted to stay max in a corporate lane. And if you're going to play that game for a long time, you got to stay in the game. If you're industrious, resourceful, entrepreneurial, it almost doesn't matter if you got the right approach and mindset, I suppose. So we're tussling with that for sure. And
Well, all I can say is know that the time that you spend, that both of you spend, with Leo at this stage, you'll never regret it. You'll never regret.
all right, George, top of the hour, final question for you. I want you to visualize well into the future. Alex, Courtney sitting around, probably with their family, with their friends, reflecting on their father. Maybe you're still alive like your dad. You're in your 90s. I don't know. But just picture your kiddos are in their 60s, their 70s, and they're reflecting on the impact they had or that you had on their life. What are you known for? What do you hope you're known for? But what are you known for? What are the 3 things you hope you're known for when they tell the tale of George Pietrogallo Jr.?
Well, more than anything, I hope they know that they were loved from before they were actually conceived all the way through their entire life. I hope they know they were loved and valued. I hope they know that they were cared for and fiercely defended by their dad. And I hope that they know that, that I'll always be with them no matter what. We have the great news for all dads is that we have a heavenly father and we have a great example of what love truly is. And no matter what our circumstances, no matter what our family backgrounds were, we can look to that example and say, that's what I want to be.
I can't wait for your kids to hopefully listen to this and reflect on that. I'm pretty confident you're nailing all of those things. So, George, I got to tell you, it's an honor to be your friend and to be a colleague of yours and to spend some time talking about fatherhood amongst all the other topics we get to cover. So thank you so much for your time today, and look forward to getting this published so the world can hear your wisdom. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you for having me, and all the best to you and to Mackenzie and Leo.
Thank you, sir. There you have it. That's been another episode of Whoa Dad, Go Dad. If you like what you're hearing, hit the like button, subscribe to the podcast so you get the future ones, and please spread the word and post this episode to your social networks. That's powerful. Perhaps the best thing you can do is share this directly with a new dad or a soon-to-be dad that you know personally. Let them know you're rooting them on. And indeed, drop a comment and be really a part of this dialogue on fatherhood with me. Let me know in the comments a question you want me to ask other dads, or just some feedback. How does this sound to you? What's helpful? What stands out about these conversations? I would appreciate that intel as I grow Whoa Dad, Go Dad. I've got many more episodes to come, and I'm so glad you're here. looking forward to catching you on the next one.
Whoa there, go there, here we go now. Oh yeah, the ultimate roll now. Oh yeah, here we go now. Whoa there, go there.